Hello everyone, this is Abbas from Tech Radar and I have the iPad 12.9 inch with the new Magic Keyboard. Now, I've used iPad tons of times before as a laptop replacement and it hasn't always worked out in the end. I've always gone back to my Mac. Could this combination be the one? Let's find out. Let's start with the design now. Since you're using the iPad in a landscape format, I'm going to be looking at it from that angle. That's how you use it with the Magic Keyboard and the Trackpad. So my biggest complaint is the positioning of the web camera, which is on the top of the iPad when you're holding it in a portrait format right here. What happens is that when you're trying to do video calls over Microsoft Teams or Zoom, the positioning of the camera is such that you're never really looking at the camera. Now, yes, you can detach the iPad, turn it around and have the camera on top, which is then looking at you straight. But the problem is that we're not using the iPad in that form with the Magic Keyboard. It's being used more of a laptop replacement. So that would be my biggest complaint about it as far as the design is concerned. What could Apple do about it? Maybe add a second camera right here. So you've got two cameras, one over here and one over here. Yes, that makes things a little complicated, but it gives you an option to then conduct video calls using the iPad in a landscape format. The other option that you could possibly do is, well, you can't do it right now, but maybe Apple could introduce support for third-party cameras. So you've got a USB Type-C port. I've tried plugging in a couple of cameras. It doesn't really work. You have to sort of use the iPad's built-in camera for video conferencing, but maybe for iOS 14, that is something that would be nice to have. Coming to the actual Magic Keyboard, the dock itself, I quite like the design of it. It allows you to just float the iPad and then position it slightly to change the angle. It's worked well for me. There hasn't been a time where I felt that the angle didn't suit me. So I kind of like the whole design of it. I also like the fact that there's a USB Type-C port over here for charging the iPad, which it does through the magnetic connections on the dock right over here and on your iPad on this side. So it makes it quite easy to charge the iPad on a flat level, on a desk level, and then that leaves the second port of the iPad open for any data transfer or anything else that you want to do with it. Now, obviously, the keys are quite nice to type on. They're nice, they're spacious. The trackpad is a little bit small, but works quite well. I was quite impressed with it. What I would like is, again, in a future iPad OS update, is for the iPad to support multiple monitors or extend the support for monitors by not just mirroring the display. Right now, if you connect it, you're literally going to get a 4:3 aspect ratio of the iPad onto the monitor with big black areas that aren't usable. It would be nice for the iPad to recognize widescreen, ultra-widescreen monitors and then use that as an external display, which makes it a lot more like a computer. Coming back to the trackpad, I mentioned that it's small in size, but that doesn't stop you from using it the way that you'd like it to. Gestures work beautifully. You've got 3-finger gestures as well as 2-finger gestures. 3-finger gestures, you can swipe up to go home or swipe up and hold to get a view of all the applications that are open. So while Apple's done a good job of implementing trackpad on the iPad, the problem with the iPad has always been with third-party support. I mean, I still have apps that don't work on landscape format. You still have to rotate the iPad to use them, and iPad's been out for a very, very, very long time now. So that's always been the problem with the iPad, and unfortunately that is the stage we're in with the trackpad support as well. There are some apps that work beautifully with the trackpad, even third-party apps, but a lot of the apps that I use on a daily basis, Microsoft Office being the big one, whether it's Word or Excel or anything at all, yes, the trackpad works, but the app isn't optimized to work with the trackpad, meaning that you are going to run into very unexpected behaviors using the trackpad. This will get sorted over time, but again, that's the issue that we've had with the iPad over so many years, where app developers don't necessarily always give it a priority to fix that. Google being on that list, Google's very lazy at fixing iPad apps. Let's just not even get there. Now, in order to combat that, what you could potentially do is use Safari on the iPad Pro with the keyboard, and then use a lot of apps for that. When I'm on the laptop, when I'm on my Mac, I use a lot of apps such as Slack or Teams or Microsoft Office for that matter, running in my browser, and those actually work quite okay on the iPad. Apple's done a good job with Safari on it, where a lot of the apps that we generally use on desktops work reasonably well or quite well or almost perfect on the iPad. There's always the occasional app, my banking, for example, doesn't work very well on that, but there are ways around it. So that kind of brings up the question whether you want to use the browser on the iPad as your, as your main interface for using an app, or you actually use a third-party app or the app itself. So let me give you an example. If we use Microsoft Outlook, I like the Outlook app. It works decently on the iPad. Yes, I mean, it could use a bit more polish or support for Trackpad and stuff like that, but overall, it's a nice app on the iPad. But the thing is that if I use Outlook on the web, I can use add-ons for Outlook that aren't supported by the Outlook app. HubSpot being an example. It's a CRM that we use in the company, and you can have HubSpot running as a sidebar in Safari on the iPad. Works quite well, almost as good as it does on a desktop level, but then it's not supported on the iPad app. So what you need to decide is, do you want to go down the apps route or do you want to go down the web browsing route? And that kind of ties into the discussion I wanted to quickly highlight was, do we really need a Mac based on ARM processors? There are rumors that Apple is working on an ARM-based Mac. My question is, why would you want to do that? I mean, do they want to evolve iPad to a level where it could replace MacBooks? Maybe for a MacBook Pro, maybe for an iMac Pro or a Mac Pro, you still have those Intel processors or whatever else to do all the heavy lifting. But for a general computer, such as the MacBook Air, or the MacBook that Apple no longer sells, why would you want to equip them with an ARM processor? The problem there is that a lot of applications will then either need to be emulated to run on ARM, which we've seen Windows unsuccessfully do. I'm not saying that Apple will run into that issue, but it is a problem that they're going to have to face, right? So the question is, why do they want to switch Mac to an ARM processor and carry all that weight along with it, where there's going to be a completely new cycle of app development to be optimized for Macs, when you already have the iPad, which is being positioned into becoming a laptop replacement. And for many things, it does that beautifully. I think with the iPad OS maturing, you could very easily have this machine doing almost as good of a work as you would do from a regular MacBook. And I think with Apple separating iOS from iPad OS, I would think that would be the reason for them doing this, so then they can carry the iPad OS forward, maybe build in support for adding multiple monitors, maybe adding a camera, all of those things that I mentioned that the iPad can't do at the moment. Maybe that is on the plan. And then the question again is, then why do we need an ARM-based Mac? Maybe that's a discussion to be had on another day. But as far as the iPad is concerned, with the Magic Keyboard, it is one step closer to becoming a laptop. I think what we kind of need to wait on, and I feel that this is something that we always wait on whenever the iPad moves closer or inches closer towards becoming a laptop, is for third-party app support. Hopefully that is faster than it has been over the past. I mean, if Microsoft can get things working, if Apple can start building more support into iPad OS, I can see that happening a lot sooner. Would I be able to use this as my primary laptop? Yes. Would I miss using my Mac as my primary laptop? Definitely. This is Abbas from Tech Radar signing out. Please do stay tuned to Tech Radar for anything in the world of tech, and please do subscribe to us and hit the bell icon to get notified of all our new videos.